Okay, it appears to be 6 o'clock, so I call the Tuesday, March 5th, 2024 City Commission meeting to order. Could we call the roll, please?
Mayor Butler.
Here.
Commissioner Adamczyk.
Yes.
Commissioner Nicola.
Yes.
Commissioner Opel.
Here.
Commissioner Mata.
Here.
Mayor, we have 5 commissioners present. The quorum of 3 has been met.
Okay, excellent. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item on the agenda is we have a couple of proclamations, and I've asked Mayor Pro Tem Susan to read this one since it is a Women's Day thing, and she deserves the honor of reading that one. And it looks like we have, what, 3 representatives from the American Association of University Women. If you could come forward.
Whereas in 1911, International Women's Day was first honored in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland, where more than 1 million women and men attended rallies campaigning for women's rights to work, vote, be trained, hold public office, and for an end to gender discrimination. And in 1977, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution calling on member states to proclaim for a day for women's rights and international peace. And following the United Nations lead, each year, the United States President issues a proclamation calling on all citizens to observe March as National Women's History Month, as well as a separate proclamation on International Women's Day, March 8th. Advancing the rights, opportunities, and full participation of women and girls is the great unfinished business of the 21st century. International Women's Day is a day to celebrate the collective power of women, uphold women's achievements, recognize challenges, focus greater attention on women's rights and gender equality, encourage and mobilize all people to do their part to bring about positive change. Now, therefore, the mayor of the city of Manhattan, Kansas, does hereby proclaim Friday, March 8th, 2024, as International Women's Day in the city of Manhattan to motivate and unite friends, colleagues, and the community to think, act, and accelerate gender parity, to inspire inclusion. And may I present you with this copy of the proclamation?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Susan Adamczyk. I just want to first acknowledge our members that are here. I'm Yusha Reddy. I am president of AAUW. AAUW is the American Association of University Women. This is Karen Penner, also one of our members. Barbara Gatewood is also our social media and website manager, as well as Karen McCullough is one of our members as well. So I'm glad we're all here. This is our 9th year celebrating International Women's Day in the city of Manhattan. And we often have 4 panelists, and this year is similar. We have Agnieszka Lasko. She's a pianist, and she's from Poland. She completed her master's degree in piano performance at the Music Academy of Lodz and is currently pursuing a graduate studies in piano pedagogy in the School of Music, Theater, and Dance at Kansas State University. Ana Lucia Mendoza, she's a PhD student from Brazil, and she's also one of our executive directors for MART, which has the, takes care of the Afghan refugees in our community. Claudia Pratisco, she is from Romania, and she is at Kansas State University. She's the first vice provost of graduate education and dean of University Graduate School. Vijay Shahaswari is from Iran and is currently pursuing a master's degree in curriculum and instruction at Kansas State University, where she also serves as president of the Iranian Graduate Students Association. We have our program this Friday at the Holiday Inn by campus at 7 o'clock. We have a dinner as well, but we've had over 70 people already reserved for that, so the RSVP is closed on that one. We definitely want to invite everybody to come to our program, mainly because we have such a wonderful Manhattan community, and that just embraces everybody in our community and welcomes new folks from all over the world. And these are individuals that have contributed in our community in a variety of factors, and we want to make sure not only are they included and feeling inclusive in all the decisions we make, but also recognize them and what they bring to the table and have a good discussion. Sometimes we might have assumptions about certain countries, and we want to make sure, you know, that we are having a dialogue. What are their challenges? What do they wish from Manhattan? And what more can we do to be better than what we are today? And I know they all chose Manhattan, Kansas, and I want to know why they chose Manhattan. They could have gone anywhere in the United States. And to learn from each other is basically what this is about. Our theme is Inspire Inclusion, and we are excited to be a part of this. In the rest of the world, they have parades, and it's a pretty grand issue, but here we are going to celebrate by recognizing individuals in our community. Martha also came, Martha Mayer, she's also one of our members. So I just wanted to say thank you for the proclamation. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to recognize International Women's Day. Martha, come on. Karen, come on down.
You can photobomb it.
Okay. You're in here too? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Good media shots there, huh? Excellent.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Okay, our next proclamation is to honor the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation. Been around for a few years, and I think we've got a few people in the audience. Vern, Beth, Kim. Gary said he wasn't going to come up, so not to start with. But you're going to get him up here. Yeah. Photo op for that too. So let me read the proclamation. Whereas the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, located in Manhattan, Kansas, started in 1999 with an idea spearheaded by 3 community-minded individuals, supported by community members, Founders Fund contributions, and many stakeholders. And for a quarter of a century, GMCF has been a beacon of positive change in our community. With a commitment to philanthropy, GMC has played a pivotal role in nurturing, growth, fostering innovation, and enhancing the overall well-being of our community. And the mission of the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation is to build relationships between donors and community needs, providing the core value of service with accountability, integrity, quality, respect, and transparency. Through generous donors and strategic grant making since 1999, the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation has provided $95,222,419 through January 31st, 2024 in grants to support nonprofit organizations, educational scholarships, and community initiatives, enabling others to thrive and bring about meaningful change. GMCF's end-of-the-year total assets in 1999 were $202,232, growing to $338,396,373 in total assets as of December 31st, 2023, and increasing the number of funds at GMCF to well over 1,600. Greater Manhattan Community Foundation started our Partner Community Foundation program in 2000 and has expanded to 20 community foundation affiliates and associates in Northeast Kansas. With the support of GMCF, and as the annual Green Grow Match Day event started in 2013, has generated $9,832,366 for our nonprofits in the community through the generosity of thousands of donors and with the leadership of a matching gift from the Phil Howe. And the GMCF Executive Board staff, trustees look forward to the future in supporting our donors and nonprofit agencies to enhance quality of life initiatives for generations to come. Therefore, I, Wynn Butler, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, call upon all citizens of Manhattan to recognize and celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation and congratulate the Community Foundation for the significant impact made in our community. Encourage you to attend the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation Awards event at the Manhattan Conference Center on March 18th, 2024. Thank you. Appreciate the great work you do, Vern.
You bet. Appreciate it. Well, this is a privilege, and actually it's a privilege to share the evening with the previous group, who was actually a fund holder of the Community Foundation as well. And we do invite everybody on March 18th to our annual meeting, the Community Foundation event. We will be celebrating by honoring 25 individuals that have had a significant impact in the Community Foundation's history. So please join us. The community is welcome for that. We have our chair, Kim McAtee, here tonight. I know she is just dying to say a few words. So Kim, please share some words here this evening. So.
Well, thank you, Vern. I don't know what else there's to share other than what was already in the proclamation or what Vern has shared, because I was going to talk about the CFAs as well. But we do encourage everybody to come. I also would say that if you're not very familiar with us, we have a podcast, Philanthropy Today, that has been highlighting the last 25 chairs of GMCF. So that's been very educational as well. So I would encourage you to jump on those if you want any other information. We also have Gary Fees and Stacy Smith here, who work at the foundation, and Linda Cook, who is also on the board. So I wanted to recognize the fact that they came tonight as well.
And Beth Smoller will be our chair in 2 years. She's not our chair-elect this year, but she's our designate. So, so we have our leadership here, and we appreciate the commission for allowing us to have this proclamation. And certainly we enjoyed the dedication of the artwork over at the Douglas Center. That was certainly the generosity of Lincoln and Dorothy Deal, who used the Community Foundation as a recipient of their funds. So, Wynn, thank you. We appreciate it, and I appreciate all the help and support from the commissioners. So,
thank you.
Linda, Stacy, Gary.
I forgot to mention McKenna, our photographer. She's here as well.
You please do. You want to do the official handshake here in the process? Oh, sure. Somebody get on this side up here.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comments. And public comments are limited to those things that are not on the agenda tonight. You'll have a chance to speak on consent agenda and the other items later. This is just open public comments, not related to any item on the agenda. You can do so at this time. Members of the public that signed up in person on the list go first, but I don't think anybody signed up tonight. If you come forward, please state your name and residential address and the organization you're representing for the record. Each speaker has 5 minutes and can only speak once and must stop speaking when the timer sounds. Is there anyone that would like to make comments to the commission tonight? Okay, well, no one wishes to make comments, then we'll close public comment and move on to commissioner comments. Karen? No? Susan? No? Okay, I guess no comments tonight from anyone. That moves the meeting right along. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. The Commissioner may request an item be moved for separate discussion and consideration immediately following the consent agenda or at a different point on the agenda if desired by the City Commission. Commissioners, any comments on the consent agenda? Go ahead. No. Okay, I just wanted to point out, I guess, one item on here that probably is of interest to everyone, which is item H, and that is the agreement to appoint Jason Hilgers as the interim city manager while we're in the process of hiring Ron's replacement due to his retirement. So that's probably of interest to most folks out there, and probably will be a newspaper article in the morning for sure. So seeing no other discussion on the consent agenda, do we have a motion? Oh, forgot that. If there any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that and now ask for a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Adamczyk?
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough?
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt?
Yes.
Commissioner McCullough? Commissioner Mott?
Yes.
Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
So Karen, you almost got 2 votes tonight.
A little out of practice.
Okay, the next item is the general agenda, and we have one item, which is just a discussion item tonight, and that's applying industrial revenue bonds to rental housing development projects. And I guess, Stephanie, you're going to take the lead on that.
I am. Let me pull up the presentation. Let me try to open it a different way just so it's a little bit larger. Is this going to work since it's not in PowerPoint tonight? Okay. Good evening, Stephanie Peterson, Director of Community Development. This evening we have for you an update on an IRB policy, really looking to get some very specific feedback from the 5 of you so that we can continue to move forward with developing the actual policy. As a reminder, industrial, or IRBs, stands for Industrial Revenue Bonds. Traditionally, the cities use these for commercial and industrial properties and incentivizing those companies to move here or relocate here. IRBs can also be used for residential properties as long as it's rental unit. Before we dive into IRBs specifically, wanted to just kind of make sure that we were still headed in the right direction. Staff's recommendation at this point was to move forward with an IRB policy. IRBs, and I think I alluded to this a little bit in the agenda item summary, they are much more straightforward, and statute really kind of outlines the process that we go through in issuing those. So we were going to move forward with an IRB policy, and that gives the developers right now something to utilize if they so choose for rental properties, while at the same time continuing to move forward on RHID. We learn something every week new on RHID. There's a lot of different ways that we can structure these. There's a lot of different financial mechanisms that we could utilize. So we continue to educate ourselves and have a lot of internal conversations surrounding RHIDs, but that's going to take us several months to try to put something together and continue to seek your feedback and guidance on that. And as we talk about both of these, we of course have that workforce housing sales tax out there, and you may see us from time to time maybe recommending how we could layer that sales tax with some of these other tools. Just a brief recap of industrial revenue bonds for residential properties. There's two ways in which these could be used. One of those is having that property tax abatement, in which we would abate a percentage of the ad valorem increment for a period of up to 10 years. The other way in which these can be used is a sales tax exemption on construction materials and labor. For IRBs to be issued for residential projects, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but for the market rate units, which is what we're talking about here, they have to be rental. And that's because they consider any sort of rental property a commercially held property. And they also need to be, typically these are used for higher density developments, so we need to make sure that there are 2 or more units in any of the projects that we issue IRBs for.
Can I ask? Stephanie?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify, because these are kind of new to me, but the 10-year abatement begins at the time the units are completed?
I believe it's when we issue the IRBs.
Okay.
I'm going to look to Jason.
There's several steps in the process, but typically the owner wants to wait until they're completed to start that. They don't have to. You'll issue like a resolution of intent to issue, and then when the developer is ready to approach the commission, we can do that. Typically, it's towards the end of completion. Multi-phase projects over possibly even multiple years, you may end up with actually multiple issues in order to leverage that benefit. So it can vary project by project.
Thank you both.
When we began drafting the IRB policy, we really modeled it after Salina's. I think you've received a copy of that. And what Salina does is they have basically 2 filters that they send projects through. And as I was thinking about this after we'd already published the presentation, I think the easiest way to talk about this would just say there's 2 steps. So step 1 is our basic requirements. These are the things that a project has to meet in order for us to even move forward in that conversation. So these are things that we absolutely know we need every single project to have or not to have, however we look at that. Step 2 is then looking at specific criteria that we want to award points for based on the type of product that we're trying to achieve. So for sales tax exemption, the way that Salina has structured this is if you're only asking for that sales tax exemption, you just have to meet step 1. As long as you're meeting those basic requirements, whatever it is that we choose to create for those, staff would then take that project. We would work with bond counsel to draft that resolution of the intent to issue bonds, and then we would bring that before you for consideration. For the sales tax, or for the property tax abatement component, that's where we would actually get into the scoring criteria, and you'll see later on, we use those scoring criteria to determine the length of that IRB. We can go up for a period of 10 years. It doesn't have to be that full 10 years, and then what percentage of the increment we would like to abate on that property. So for step 1, those basic requirements, there's a couple here that are are common, and then there's some other ones below that are truly questions back to you all to get direction. So we would, a basic requirement is the project has to result in a net gain of 2 or more dwelling units. Another one of these, we don't have it on here, but that the project has to be rental. There's also several communities, they say that the project has to be operational within a 3-year period. That doesn't have to be a requirement. That could be a criteria that we end up looking at, where if a project can come online faster, maybe they get more points awarded. But if you want to make sure that a project is being delivered within a certain amount of time, we can certainly make that a requirement of all IRB applications or projects. So now moving down below where it has this requirements versus criteria, this is where, and we'll come back to this slide at the very end. I just wanted to kind of introduce some of these questions we had for you. Then we'll go through several different projects that we have already in our community. But I wanted to present these so you kind of have these in the back of your mind as we look at some of the projects to see if that's something that we desire for Manhattan. So one, do we want to limit IRBs to just within Aggieville or downtown? If we have that as a requirement, that means that if a project wasn't within one of those districts, we wouldn't even be considering it. We could have it as a criteria where if you have a project that's located within one of those districts, you get extra points. That would mean that we're trying to incentivize projects within those districts. Do we want to look at vacant lots within our community that aren't within those 2 districts? There's several examples that will show that some of them have been there since the 1980s. They've never been developed on. Are those properties that we are wanting to utilize our ad valorem tax for to incentivize the development of those properties? The feedback we received from you all for RHID is that you want to look at a certain percentage of units are within the workforce range. I have up here 50%. That's not a hard and fast. We can certainly look at other percentages there. But do we want to make sure that a certain percentage of the units receiving, excuse me, the IRB incentive are within that workforce range? Do we want to look at greenfield developments, or is this a tool you want to focus on infill development? And then are there a certain number of units that you're wanting to see from the projects that are utilizing this tool? As an example, looking at Salina, they sometimes will say we're only considering projects that have 20 units. We're not looking at anything less. We can do that. If we do, we'll eliminate certain projects, but that's certainly, again, just the feedback that we're looking from you this evening. I'm going to jump into the scoring criteria just so you can kind of begin to see the difference between having those requirements and then actually using some of these criteria to score the projects. This is just kind of an example of what that scoring sheet might look like. We can certainly remove and add to this table as you see fit. We have 4 here. Salina probably has 10 that they use as criteria. We've also have a weight identified, again, just more for conversation's sake at this point. But that first one, as far as efficiency factor for the lot size or the zoning district, this is looking at if a developer is fully utilizing the density that is allowed in that zoning district, or that lot square footage would allow. So let's say that we had a lot that was in the RLA district, so it would allow for a 5-unit townhome. And the developer comes to us and says, well, we're only going to do a duplex. Well, in this scenario, they wouldn't receive the max points there because that product doesn't fully utilize that zoning district. Now, at the same time, if their lot size wasn't large enough to accommodate that 5-unit townhome and could only accommodate a duplex, they would receive the maximum amount of points because they're fully utilizing their zoning district and that lot size. We also, at the same time, want to be mindful for the compatibility and that kind of context-sensitive design. So number 2 here speaks to how that proposed project works within the surrounding neighborhood. If we have a 5-unit townhome proposed on a lot and it's entirely surrounded by single-family detached homes, that might not be the most appropriate product, in the middle of that neighborhood. So if a developer said, we know we could do this larger, higher density product, but we really think a duplex is going to be more sensitive to the surrounding property owners, then they would receive the full points of that. Looking at proximity to services, especially if we talk about workforce or if we talk about utilizing our existing infrastructure. Do we want to have a metric where the closer you are to some of those community amenities, the more points you receive? And then the last one is just another example of how we can give priority, I guess, to projects that are within that are under a district plan, if we want to, if we choose to. This is the way that we kind of envisioned this one, is it wouldn't just have to be Aggieville or downtown. It could also be where we've been talking about a Points Avenue corridor plan that would have kind of this vision for what that corridor looks like. So if a project falls within a district plan that has a very specific vision for that corridor, if you meet that vision, you would get the full points. If you don't meet it, you would get a 0, making sure that we can fully fulfill the vision of those plans that the Commission's adopted. And then the pink box here, or the lighter red, it just shows an example. For this table, there was a maximum of 18 points possible. If you received 10 of those points, you would receive that 10-year abatement at 100%. And then you can see how it's structured going further down. Again, all of that can be massaged as we work through this, but that's just to give you an example of how these scoring criteria would be used to set the length of that abatement and what percentage.
Yeah, I have one question on the abatement, just so it's clear. That's going to be city only? It won't affect the school board or the county?
No, the city does have the authority to abate the property taxes for the county and the city, or in the school district.
It's at your sole discretion, and rarely, if ever, have we ever carved off other entities. They are notified of the hearing where you all consider the IRB for abatement, but they're given no veto power in that process.
So we could actually...
Yeah, and that's why IRBs are targeted more towards infill and multifamily.
Okay, because I know that's a concern the county commissioners will have if we just, but I didn't realize we could just say we're going to do it and they can't veto it, which is different than the other process we were looking at.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
To give you an idea of some additional criteria other communities have used, they incentivize if there's a new or a unique product type. So we've talked a little bit about cottage homes. Downtown lofts are something we heard a lot about during our Beyond Tomorrow downtown planning effort. There's certainly other examples of this that we could define as new or unique, but that is something other communities have looked at incentivizing. There's a couple of these that really relate back to that infill component. A lot of communities are using these just for infill projects. So we immediately have available water and sewer connections. We're not having to extend our city infrastructure to serve these properties. Another one that I think is really kind of interesting and unique is that if the project is going to provide some sort of desirable public infrastructure improvement, we could allocate extra points to that project. So let's say that we have a downtown project that's occurring and the developer is willing to put in curb extensions to help with the pedestrian safety in that area. Maybe they're willing to make some storm sewer improvements as they're improving their site, or even improve an alley. If there is some sort of public benefit of that project, we could allocate additional points. Located on infill development, again, that's another one that's been repeated several times in the policies that we've reviewed. It kind of speaks to the same point as number 2 there. And then having a mixed use component. So that could be, excuse me. Traditionally, when we think of mixed use, it's incorporating residential and maybe a commercial, retail, nonprofit space within that building. But we could also look at if the project delivers a variety of different rents. So it's not just higher income rents. It's kind of mixed throughout the different income ranges. We could look at that as a criteria as well. With that, I'm going to dive into some of the examples I have. And then, as I mentioned, we'll come back to these questions at the end for you to give any feedback or direction or ask any questions that you may have. So all the slides are going to be set up the same way. You'll see a picture from the street view of what that project looks like, the map identifying where it's located. Down in the lower left, you'll see what the project, if the project has a name, what it's called, the type of residential development that it is representing, its location, and then the number of units. And then up in the right-hand corner, you'll see the, let me grab my water. Okay, sorry about that. You'll see the annual tax liability. That is for all taxing entities. And then I've broken out the city's share there for 1 year. And then you can see if we were to give a 10-year abatement for 100% of the increment, what that would equate to for the city. So the example we have here, Strasser Landing, which is a downtown brownstone type of development. It has a main or a ground floor unit and then a second unit above. From kind of a planning perspective, this does a really great job of kind of separating the commercial part of the north end redevelopment, or maybe this is the south end redevelopment. No, this is north. The north end redevelopment from that single family neighborhood. So it gives us a good transition from the commercial activity back to that single family neighborhood.
Commissioners, before we leave that, and all the slides really hereafter, the annual tax liability, take that times 10 for the full benefit. I think Stephanie's shown you what the exposure is to the city, but that $352,030 is what is available for a 10-year 100%. She's carved off 10%, and then you've showed 10 years at our 10% in these figures. But that 100% for 10 years, the $352,000 would be available. I think what Stephanie's showing you is just the city's portion of that 10-year.
Yeah, so that we'd be taking the school board money.
Yeah,
and the county.
And the county, correct.
Yeah, so the 10-year 100% is just the city's share if we were to move forward in that direction.
Was Strasser Village built with IRBs?
No.
No.
I don't believe we've, unless it's LIHTC, we've never done a residential IRB before. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. We participated in LIHTC with the IRB sales tax exemption on construction. We wanted to go around the community and just kind of give you a feel of what it would look like to incentivize with IRBs with an abatement on products of similar size, nature, scope, area of the community. You can see here, I mean, and you'll see this throughout your presentation, the values vary widely. And you also know there are different reactions to housing in this community geographically. When you talk about infill downtown, it has a different reaction than a apartment complex built on the edge of town. There's just a different feel and a different reaction from our community, whether that's competition, whether that's necessary infill. There's just all types of reactions. So these slides are really to help you realize what the potential at 100%, or if you're just looking at the city, in certain areas of the community, what that would really mean back to the developer.
So as I go through these, I would encourage you to keep those criteria and those requirements we just went through in mind, but also to be thinking, yes, we would want to incentivize a rental project in this location, or no, that is not an area we would want to. If there's a certain structure type that you really like, if it's a certain kind of the site layout, all of that feedback would be really helpful for staff as we continue to develop that policy. Our next one is just right up the road, Strasser Village. This is a multifamily apartment complex. It has 95 units in it. You can see there what the annual tax liability is, and then what that abatement would be just for the city's portion over the full 10 years, 100%. These are some townhomes that were built over in the northwest part of town. There's 6 units here. They just kind of have an interesting site layout where the garages are kind of staggered, or each unit's staggered back a little bit, not just all in a row. Another development that is up in the northwest part of town, these have 7 units. They have one-car garage. The ones before were a two-car garage type of layout. And I should say that, so the ones that are, so this one and the other one, the city had to extend infrastructure in order to serve those. That's an area that continues to be built out over time. The links, even though that was a while ago, I think it's important that we bring that up as something that a development type. This is 614 units. It was located off of East Marlatte. There were several public improvements that were made in order to accommodate that residential development, and you can see there that annual tax liability, and if that were spread out among all the taxing entities, it would be pretty substantial for that 10-year period. Mm-hmm. Stone Point Apartments, just south of Anderson off of Scenic Drive. This is 24 units that were developed. Again, you can see the annual tax liability there is just for, and that's just for this one property. It doesn't include these, they're on separate parcels.
Yeah, the other ones are Manhattan Housing Partnership, aren't they?
I think those are across the street. I think those are over here. They're getting ready to come offline as the LIHTC projects. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about infill. There are 21 infill lots set up for townhomes off of Little Kitten. They have been platted since the 80s. There's nothing has been done with them, or really we haven't heard anything interest-wise in developing these. So you can see if the city were to issue IRBs just for our share, that is close to $400,000 over that 10-year period. But since the 1980s, I guess the way I think about it is how much property tax we've lost by not having anything developed on those.
Is that liability undeveloped? Is that like the
so I estimated that each of those townhomes would be about $300,000. I have no idea if that's accurate. So I did the liability based on an improved value.
Okay.
Good question. Stephanie, do we know who, you must know who owns that?
Yep, the same people that own across the street. This is a project that the commission took action on last year to rezone it. It was called Browning Townhomes for a while. It's now Browning Duplex, but it still has this, we still for some reason call it the Townhome Project. There's 4 units that it's been replatted to have each unit on its own lot. This is based, again, the information up here is based on an improved value. I believe I used, again, $300,000 per side. I don't know if that's close to being accurate or not of what the developer proposes to do there, but just to give you a sense of what that liability would be. Okay, those are the projects I had. I think when I went through this in my head, I think it was helpful for me to kind of see up front what those questions were, those criteria, kind of go through some examples, and then dive back into the requirements and criteria, and we can go back to any of those examples, or if there's other areas in town that you think would be, if it's a product type that you would be comfortable using IRBs to incentivize. That's the feedback that we're really looking at. So I don't know if there were any initial reactions from what was presented, or if you want me to just go down the list and get some information.
Well, it'd be easier to just go down the list and get each commissioner to give you feedback.
That would be great. So as far as a project being operational within 3 years, is that something that you're feeling should be a requirement so we can get units online? Is that something that you would rather see us use as a criteria just to allocate extra points?
Yeah, I think 3 years is a pretty reasonable amount of time. Developers in the room, Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong. 3 years is pretty reasonable. And I mean, we need housing today, not in 5-10 years. So I think that's definitely, I don't know if we need to make it a requirement, but definitely a scoring criteria.
Well, I think the I mean, it's a moving target because it's 3 years from when we approve, so I don't think it's too much to ask, you know, to keep moving on some of these things. Some of them are set. But I think the first thing, 2 or more dwelling units, it seems to me this is a lot of paperwork and complicated budgeting thoughts. I think we shouldn't look at that for, you know, just a couple houses or a couple dwelling units. I think it should be, I don't know how big, but it should certainly be bigger than a net gain of 2.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
Okay, so IRBs, we have the abatement and the sales tax exemption. For the sales tax exemption, that's a pretty simple process where bond council drafts a resolution, we bring it before you. That's pretty straightforward. I agree with you, the abatement takes quite a bit more time to work through. So are you saying for both of them or just for the abatement?
Well, it seems to me that, and I am not a builder, but if I'm planning on building 2 dwelling units, I don't see why I need a lot of assistance from the city.
Okay.
On any kind of, you know, obviously, I would not say we should say nobody can come in and talk to us about certain things. And there may be some unique land use issues and land placement issues that need more assistance. But I really think that we need a lot of units, and we should put our emphasis on a net gain of, you know, 10 or 20.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree with Karen, and I'm thinking in particular about infill opportunities where, you know, a duplex might be appropriate in certain areas, and maybe I don't know, maybe it be required that IRBs would not be issued unless you had at least 6 units. I'm just pulling that out of the air. But they might be spread across 3 different locations. Just a thought.
So the project, if we defined a project where it wasn't 3 contiguous lots, I don't know if, Jason knows a lot more about IRBs than I do, so I'll look to him to see if that's something we can do.
Yeah, you can always chop things up and take them on, you know, as you're going to construct or phase them in. IRBs have a lot of flexibility in that regard, but they could be considered separate completely. The developer's going to need to know what they're committed to. When you get into IRBs, especially with abatements, it's about really finishing a certain project at a certain time and moving it through the process to gain your abatement. If you got another phase, you can obviously move that through as well. So some of the questions surrounding the number of units we've looked at from a geographic basis. Infill has a different, again, it's a different field than something on the periphery where there's ample land. You're right, it's a lot of time, effort, and energy by staff, but Stephanie's not wrong when she talks about sales tax exemptions, 1 page, engage bond counsel, they can generate them fairly quickly. If you're getting into abatement, I think abatement draws a whole lot more attention and scrutiny.
Do we have a map of condemned property, vacant lots, areas within the city limits that would be suitable for infill?
We did. We put together a vacant lot map for our workforce housing steering committee that looked at the sales tax, and there really aren't a lot of vacant lots in town right now. I think one of the things that we should keep in mind as we're looking at utilizing IRBs is the redevelopment potential, because maybe a property owner, or a developer, having IRBs as a tool, they might be willing to go in and purchase a property that is maybe not well taken care of or has a higher and better use, and they wouldn't be willing to do that if this tool wasn't available to them. So I don't think we can look just at vacant properties. I think there might be some others that pique interest if this tool wasn't made available to them, but we don't have too many examples of vacant lots. We kind of highlighted some of the main ones on this slide.
To use it in that respect, does it have to be a tear down and rebuild, or
Can it be a remodel or change of use, or?
So we could do, it could be a remodel if we were actually gaining units from that. What we don't want is someone that already has a duplex to receive IRBs and just update their property.
Flip the house.
Yes.
Can I ask about the sales tax exemption? So how does that work from our end? Like, does that cost us money? Because, like, do we pay the sales tax as a city for the developer, or do we just kind of vouch to Department of Revenue that this is a project that should not be charged sales tax?
So the project itself will be exempt from sales tax.
Right.
So they will go out, typically $10 million project, $5 million of that, roughly half, are for goods that can be taxed. Doesn't mean they all will be, but they can be. So that $5 million then take times 9.15% in Riley County, Manhattan, 9.45. I mean, wherever you get it, if it's bought here in Manhattan, 6.5% goes to the state. So they're the ones giving up the majority of the revenue.
Right.
But it does get into the business is still done locally. It's just the taxing entity won't receive that sales tax.
Okay.
So in certain circumstances, we've seen other cities is where they buy their products, deliver them to their contractor's home, and then they truck them to Manhattan. And in those circumstances, we've had no impact because it's bought somewhere else. The state of Kansas is really the biggest user of this in terms of where the savings are.
Yeah.
But you could argue from a local perspective that if they bought lumber at Griffith and they didn't have to pay sales tax, that tax would, our 1.95% would have come back to the city.
Sure.
So you could look at it from a loss perspective in that regard. But the business is still doing the business.
Yeah, but it's a big savings for the builder.
Correct.
On their end.
Yep.
And even if we don't capture that sales tax, it's still a pretty good deal if we're able to offer that, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's sort of a definitive deal. It's, they save money on what they're building.
Yeah.
Not like the property tax, which goes on for 10 years and,
Okay, my thoughts on that, I think about that Browning project you said there, when you say 2 or more units, if we put like 20 on there, we couldn't have done that Browning thing.
Right.
Because we had to rezone. So I don't have a problem with us leaving it to say 2 or more at a minimum, because we just don't know what the size of the lots are going to be, the drainage, all the various criteria we have. So I would leave that there, but then I would also put it under the scoring criteria.
Okay.
So that, the more units you have, the more points you get. Yeah. And I think that way we're covering both ends of it, and it gives us the flexibility that we need. And I would do the same thing with the 3 years. I'd put 3 years up there on top, but then if you can get it done in 18 months, you pick up some points down there to encourage it. And I think all the criteria, and we need to stay focused on why we're doing this, which is workforce housing. And I think back to your chart you made, it's that center group. And so one of the criteria's got to be that the final cost of the project, before we give you IRBs or anything, has to fall within that band. And of course, that's going to be a moving band. You'll end up updating it every couple of years. But if it doesn't fall into that workforce housing, don't come forward and bring it, because that's not what our mission was.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I was asking about the sales tax, is like, if it's a fairly simple process, I don't know that we need to raise the limit on that, because it sounds like a pretty good low-cost incentive for us, and a pretty good deal for the developers if they're able to buy their materials without that sales tax.
So how do we differentiate between somebody who wants to build a mega mansion? It's somebody's workforce housing. I mean, it seems to me that we've got people that, they're building 6 units here, 7 units there. Are we giving pretty much carte blanche to all developers in Manhattan?
That would be a question for you all. And I think that's where maybe it comes back to geography. That's a really good way. So I'll just throw this out there. Are you wanting to issue IRBs for housing east of campus in those neighborhoods? Are you wanting to issue IRBs for greenfield development? Where is it, and this is really a comfort level from the 5 of you, where is it that you're willing to use our property tax dollars or the county or the school districts to incentivize a rental housing product? And that might be, you may say if it's an infill lot and it has existing development, we're willing to consider it. Yes, we want to consider everything. You bring us all your projects and we'll score them and we'll see how the number falls. Or do you want us to focus on targeting certain areas and certain products? That's really what these questions are trying to get.
See, that's for me like the basic requirement up there. It's got to fall in that window. You know, the final price of the project has got to be the workforce number. I think that's around 220,000 at the high end.
We're talking about rental.
And yeah,
so it'd be
well,
whatever
the
rent.
1850
but
right
you've
now
also
is the
got
rent.
a rental number there.
Yep,
Yeah.
1850 right now.
So if it's going to rent for more than that, then don't bring us the project.
Okay.
Because our goal was workforce housing.
Yeah.
Not for people to use these to make extra money. That's why we're using. I don't like the idea of government getting too involved in this, but we've made the determination that the marketplace isn't going to make workforce housing happen without our intervention. But we got to stay focused so that all of our interventions are to accomplish that middle band of workforce. Even though, as Karen said, the mega mansion fits in there too, but we're not going to subsidize the mega mansion. It's only that middle part. That's where I think the focus should be.
Well, I agree with you on the focus, but I think on the question of the geography or where we're going to put it, is we have to work on that part as well. I mean, I would want it to be for everything everywhere, but we should give more points if it's going to be in like downtown or Aggieville or infill, because that's where we already have the infrastructure and it's going to cost us less from a service perspective. If you do greenfield way out someplace and it's roads and it's more sewer lines and it's everything else, then we're going to have to pay more. So, you're not going to get as many points for that as you would if you build it in where it's cost effective.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree. So that, putting that in the, sort of a double thing. Basic requirement, you got to fit this, but if you hit these areas of the city, as John has outlined, then you get more points.
Sure. So just to recap real quick, so far we have for criteria, the 3 years construction completed, with the caveat for criteria. Also looking at 2 or more units, but getting more points. The more units you have, the more points you would receive. And then making sure those rental units are within the workforce housing range. I think on that, the question I would have is, do you want all of those within workforce housing? Do you want to have a certain percentage of those within that range?
I think we should do this, which is anything that fits the workforce definition gets the IRB or the tax abatement. So if I build like 10 units and 5 of them meet our criteria, then they're going to get 50% abatement.
Okay.
The other half, no, because it doesn't fit the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. I think that's easy enough.
Yep, I think you're right.
Do you plan to differentiate student housing from workforce housing?
For example, the tax credit housing are not supposed to rent to students. Used to be that way. I don't think they're eligible to rent tax credit housing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the workforce housing is kind of outside of most students' range. Like that $1,800 a month is pretty high for a student to be paying for rent. So I kind of wonder if it might just take care of itself, but
of course, you might have 6 students move in.
Yeah.
Stephanie, is that 1850 based on like a 4-bedroom?
Yeah, so right now the max rent is $1,850. That's based on 2021 data, and that's on a 4-person household. That's just what HUD uses. So yes.
4-person as in 4 adults? Or
it doesn't specify.
Yeah.
That raises a concern that I saw recently with in fact, I think it's one of the units that you included on your presentation. There are only 2 bedrooms and are supposedly targeting workforce housing, the firemen and the teacher. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine them being occupied for too long if that is it might be a good entry place for a newly married family or for a single individual, but they could only stay in it maybe 5 or 6 years if they have 2 kids. There's only so long that most families would have children sharing rooms, particularly if they're different genders or if there's a big age difference.
So you bring up, this is something that actually Salina addresses in their policy, is that you get more points under their criteria if 20% of your units have 3 or more bedrooms. Again, targeting that family kind of workforce housing versus a single or a couple living together.
I know one of the things that we've talked about with developing our workforce is newly graduated K-State students, and a lot of them are at a 2-bedroom, for a few years. Sure. is exactly what they're looking for, and they don't want anything bigger than that. So I hear what you're saying. I think we just need to find a good balance.
Fair enough.
But I think it would be very difficult to say you can't rent to students if it's a rental. And, if you've got 4 bedrooms, you've got 4 students, that's only $400 or whatever my math is. So, yeah, I mean, there's just, you can try and put rules in, but I think it's hard to exclude student housing, too. Don't
we have an ordinance against?
Yeah, I don't know if we can legally discriminate against housing. That would be a Katie question.
Well, we have an ordinance that for the number of households that can live in one.
For unattached people, yeah.
Okay.
Right. But of course, if you look in the paper on ads, it says things like 6 bedrooms. And you know perfectly well that there's 6 people going into that apartment or whatever. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just that we don't have rental inspection, and we can't patrol everything. I'm just saying to try and blanket say no students might be difficult. K-State is requiring freshmen to live in the dorms now, which should make a slight difference. And anyway, we'll see.
I also think it would be difficult for staff to try to monitor who's living there. That would take quite a bit of time and resources, I believe, to follow that for a 10-year period for all of those units.
That was another question I had, was when we talk about workforce housing, right? Obviously, we're going to say you can't rent this for more than that price. How do we monitor that?
Yeah, so some of the other cities, they actually require the developer or whoever the property manager is, they have to submit every year some sort of documentation for who they're renting to, whether that is their tax return, whatever that approved documentation is. And then what we would do as the city is if we see that they're not complying, then we don't have to reimburse that abatement back to them. We could have some of them set up that if you don't meet this requirement, you only get a certain percentage back over that period of time, or just that project ends.
So this, doing this is still going to create a little bit of administrative work within the staff.
Yeah, my hope is, though, that we can, through a developer agreement or whatever that looks like, that we can put some of that onus back on them to submit to us the documentation. And if that documentation doesn't arrive, or if that documentation doesn't fulfill the requirements of that development agreement, then we hold most of the cards, because they're looking to us to rebate back to them that property tax.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan for that.
Yeah, there has to be some clawback on there. It probably wouldn't extend more than 10 years, though, if you're going to do, because after 10 years, we wouldn't have
Correct.
any hammer.
Correct.
So it could change then. And I agree. I wouldn't try to, keep track of who a student is or not. That's just not relevant. And that occupancy thing, well, code can enforce it, but again, it's hard to enforce no matter what you do.
Agreed. Okay, jumping down below, it doesn't sound like we want to have any sort of geographical restrictions right now. Am I hearing that?
Well, I think you're getting at it with the point thing. We do give more points for, you know, trying to keep the density higher in areas that can support that have walkable areas and transportation and accessible grocery stores and that kind of thing. I mean, the Little Kitten Creek, I wouldn't give them that. I mean, it'd be great to have some places out there, but there's nothing near them except Old Chicago. I mean, you know.
I would like to point out that part of our workforce includes soldiers on Fort Riley, and having housing out on that side of town is very convenient for them. So, you know, we may not want to completely exclude that. To try and...
No, I'm not suggesting we exclude anything. I'm just saying the points should be more for the downtown density, because that's what we're trying to really kind of get infill and yeah.
I don't, again, I think I disagree. I concur with Peter's comment. Living on that side of town, I see a lot of traffic coming from those apartments that are in that area. They are losing one of those large apartment complexes. They're aging out of their tax abatement, and so we know that we have people there who are low income that are, I don't know how that shift is going to take place, but I would not rule out developing on that side of town. And it's a place where land is available.
Yeah.
So we
Again, I would just emphasize that the more we go out where land is available, we're going to have to do a lot of infrastructure and not get tax money. We should give more incentive to infill and places downtown where we can do it economically in there. Not exclude them, but get more points.
I think we can balance that. So we keep talking about Little Kitten. That already has infrastructure in the ground, so we're not extending any services. As far as looking at employment centers, and some of these we kind of did a little bit of grading internally just to see how our criteria would work. If we look at kind of this entire commercial area here, there's additional commercial areas up on Venesta. We could include that as, you know, there are opportunities, there are services that people could walk to. The feedback that you're giving me right now is exactly what I needed, because that we can balance, you know, the priority of infill development, whether it's a vacant lot or whether it's downtown, and we can allocate additional points to those projects. I think when we come back to you, I can do some mock, maybe take these exact projects and then run them through those scoring criteria so you guys can kind of see how those criteria are working and if that's the balance that you're wanting to have. Okay, I think we kind of answered the greenfield and we answered minimum number of units. Are we comfortable for these?
One thing about the Little Creek, just one real quick thing. We had a lot of discussions many years ago about runoff on Little Kitten Creek and Plymouth, and significant impact on things on the other side of Kimball. Are we taking any of that into consideration? I mean,
that, not with these scoring criteria, but before a project, if there's a vacant lot, if they don't have to go through platting before they pull a building permit, there's a new stormwater manual. So they would have to go and look at stormwater runoff and do any sort of on-site, off-site improvements to help with that, as well as the water quality side of it. So that is a new requirement, or it's a newer requirement that may have not been in place last time you were on the commission.
I just remember we had some impassioned neighbors that were very concerned about more runoff coming off of Little Kitten Creek and Plymouth, and that has proved to have been somewhat of a concern.
Yeah, I think the new regulations we put in place, you know, address that, because I'm up against Little Kitten Creek, and actually, since we did that, the flood map has actually gotten better. Some of the houses aren't in there anymore, and they're busy stabilizing the creek bed out there right now. So we've done some good work there, but clearly, I don't think that needs to be a criterion in here, because it's going to be part of the regular process for building something. Doesn't matter if it's workforce or not, you have to jump through those hoops. And that will, in some cases, limit, you know, you might have been able to cram 5 units on there, but because of these regulations, only 3 will fit because of the water condition. So,
correct.
And I think the other one you've got here, which says at least 50% workforce, I would just change that to say you only get the benefits for the workforce housing part of it.
Sure, yep.
Like if you're a developer and you want to do 50-50, fine, but you're not going to get 100% tax abatement on the entire project. Only that which fits the workforce.
Yeah.
Because I want to stay focused on that.
When we talked about RHID, it was brought up that we had to have a certain percentage be the upper value ones because that was the incentive for them to do the project. That's a different product.
Yep.
Do we have any of those concerns here?
I think that is one of my questions back to you all. Are we, if we take downtown, for example, we know that there is interest in having higher end lofts that are downtown. Is that something where we recognize that we need housing in downtown and housing at all price points? Do you want to utilize this tool for in certain districts? You're willing to accept whatever that housing product is.
Well, my question was from a developer's perspective. Do we think, or does the developer say, well, it's not going to work for me unless I get it on the upper end because that's helping me pay for everything in this because I'm going to have to hold my prices down on these other units? I don't know the answer, again, from a developer perspective.
I think the reality of a multi-family type of structure versus a single family structure, rental rates in Manhattan are interesting. I guess we could just leave it at that word. $1,850 for 4 bedrooms, that's over $450 a bedroom. There are plenty of units in Manhattan where students are living and they're paying $450 a bedroom. Now, I'm not saying it's brand new, but there are plenty of units all throughout our community going anywhere in $350 to $500. Now, there are students paying $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200 for a bedroom at some places in our community. I think it's a different equation when you look at a single-family home. A single-family home is going to be valued and sold based on square footage, slab, characteristics that are going to stay fairly consistent. Rental rates, where you live, whether it's brand new, I mean, all those things factor in. And it's a different conversation than talking about single-family homes in a subdivision. I think Manhattan historically has really wrestled with rentals for a lot of different reasons. But there are people still today actively building rentals east of campus. Go drive down Raton, go drive down Bertrand, just drive in these neighborhoods that are close. They're under construction. Their zoning's incentive enough for that area to go ahead and develop. I think that's where we're trying to massage this conversation with you all. What needs the incentive? What are we not getting built today that developers are sitting back waiting because the marketplace just doesn't support it? There are products that the marketplace will support. And even the reference to Aggieville, that's probably one of the areas we've seen the most investment in the last 5-6 years for rentals. So again, just kind of your infill comment about downtown, Commissioner, I felt like that's really starting to hit this topic on the head, because you got to think about where that product is going and who it's competing with. The competition is what we're very leery of, but I'm not going to. It needs to be brought up here. You are going to hear about it. You're going to get approached by the person who has built it. It is workforce housing, and they want the abatement too. Or they're like, you're using my tax dollars to bring competition in for me? I mean, you know those arguments are coming. So we're really looking for, and I think you've went there, Mayor, in terms of the workforce housing. We need it, and we'll take it however we can get it for a period of time. Right? These programs are out there. Let's see what we can spur. We can always draw it back. But those benefits will stay in place for quite some time, whether it's an RHID or an IRB. So, yeah, the window for applying and leveraging it may be small, but the benefit will be there for years. So geographically, style, number of units, all these things are important for you all to be able to defend why you're making the decision to incentivize something over something else.
Stephanie, are you familiar with the Capital for Communities scorecard from the Urban Institute?
I don't believe so.
You might want to take a look at that. I don't want to overburden you, but it is a tool that is doing exactly what you're asking us to do tonight. It's got about 5 different sets of criteria. Does this project meet the community goals and priorities? Is it affordable and accessible housing? Transportation and connectivity, health, social services, and amenities. We may not want to consider all of these. This particular tool is about 10 pages long, but it might help just flesh out our conversation a little bit more. I'll send you the link for it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have you got everything you need, or is there some more questions?
Just going to move on to criteria, just a couple of these I want clarification on. Are you interested in allocating additional points for a new type of product to the market or something that we don't readily see in our community?
See, I like the cottage homes thing. You had a picture of that before. I don't think we have anything like that, and that would be unique. It'd be maybe a zoning challenge to a certain extent. But I'm in favor of that, and the downtown lofts too. I just think we keep it flexible.
Yeah, I'm with you, Wynn.
We've had quite a few downtown lofts improved. Are there that many? You know, I mean, I remember touring some with the Historical Preservation Alliance, and it seemed like there were quite a few.
That is still something that our housing market analysis identified, especially for our aging population, wanting to stay in Manhattan but be in a walkable area. That's something that we continuously heard through our Beyond Tomorrow downtown plan, was a desire to have, I call them lofts just because I don't know if it's an apartment or a condo with that rental situation looks like, but yes, there is still a desire to have additional housing downtown.
I'm not arguing the housing, but downtown, you know, you've got aging people, you're not going to put them up on the second floor. I mean, we got, I mean...
Well, if there's an elevator, I mean, it's...
Yeah. Elevators are really expensive in the lofts. I mean, I'm not, if you want to do a Strasser Village and have an elevator, that's one thing, but lofts above stores, I know people who have lived in those and aged, and it wasn't quite as amenable as it could be. Anyway.
Yeah, but say somebody hypothetically buys the Commerce Bank building and wants to turn that into
I'm all for that. That's got an elevator.
Right, so it's got an elevator. It keeps the historic building in our community, and we get some housing. I think that could be a type of thing that we might want to consider.
Yeah, that'd fit all of it. Check all the boxes.
Yeah, it checks a lot of boxes. So, I mean, that is a very specific, I wish. That is a very specific project, but I think things like that, because, you know, all the buildings along points, they have 2 stories. And so we don't, aside from the Wareham, there aren't a lot of multi-level residences right there in that downtown area. I don't know if it's economically feasible to build something like that downtown and still be able to charge in that workforce housing range. But.
Yeah, and the other thing, the people I've known that live downtown, while they really loved living downtown, there was an issue of parking too. You know, you're talking about older people want to have a garage and not have to park on the street. I mean, but I'm all for saying go for it. I'm just saying it's all going to be in how you rate it and how many points you get for doing various things. Because Wynn's right. We're gonna hear from people who say, why can I not apply for my, you know, I'm building 8 houses out here on somewhere, and why can't I apply? Well, it's got to be rated, and if they come up with the most points, then we will help them.
Okay, so yes to the new product type. desirable public infrastructure improvements, is that something that we want to allocate additional points for? If they're
Yeah, I think that's essential. I mean, especially we keep talking about alleys. You know, I think we when the Bluemont Hotel was built, they did some improvements to the alley there, and that's something we definitely need to pay attention to.
Everyone good with that one? Yes. And then the last one about the mixed use component, we'll eliminate the variation in rent just based on the feedback that you had suggested, but looking at having a commercial retail component of a building. This would mostly be in downtown.
And also, I think, you know, just mixed use as far as rentals, obviously, you know, you can have higher finishes in some apartments and higher, you know, Bosch dishwashers, and then you know you can have things that are less expensive than others, which allows the developer to make some money on the whole thing.
Okay, I'm going to ask Jason if there's anything that I forgot to bring up that he and I have talked about over the course of the last month. Okay, this is great. My plan at this point, I think that was it.
I have one that we might want to consider adding, and that's efficiency standards and quality standards.
Okay.
We mentioned efficiency for the lot, but I mean like energy efficiency and quality of the build. We don't want somebody saying, yeah, I can throw up a building in 18 months, but they're going to use shoddy materials, and it's not going to be standing in 18 years. So I think that's something that we should really encourage, especially with the energy use. That can really save people a lot of money over time.
Sure,
and have that as a good one. I think, what is their lead requirements, like we used on the Discovery Center?
Yeah.
That'd be a good scorecard to just say if you meet some of those standards, because that has everything, you know, the lights going off, water control, all those kind of things.
Okay.
And yeah.
Yep, we can add that as a criteria.
And I would just say I tend to favor the tax abatements more than the IRBs. I just hate to see property tax dollars come off the...
You mean the sales tax?
Yeah. I'm sorry, did I say both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter's here to clarify what I say.
Yeah, and then again, of course, you know, this just allows us to give up to 100%, and you know, we can look at what it takes. Like a developer, if they crunch their numbers, may be able to say, okay, I don't need 100%, I need just this much, and that'll help because we got that issue with the county and the school board. I mean, not collecting property tax for 10 years is not helpful. It conflicts with some of our other goals, and so we have that sliding scale that we can make use of, and I think that's good.
So I did just a little quick math for some of the examples here. Several of them were like over the 10 years for the city's share would be about $5,000 a unit. The other ones up by the golf course were like $15,000 to $17,000. So, you know, just as for our consideration, if you look at 5,000. That's total over 10 years. We're paying 5,000 as a city, or not collecting that as property tax. If we can get one family to move into each of those units, they're probably going to spend more than $5,000 worth of sales tax in the city. So I mean, it could still end up. Yeah, and we're getting units for what I think is a pretty good deal. I mean, I think, you know, up to the 14,000, 17,000 a unit. That's a little much, but yeah, like the Lynx, I think that was about 5,000 a unit. So, you know, economically, it's a pretty good deal. I know, Karen, you've got a little bit of reservations over that, and that's understandable. But when you break it down to that level, it seems pretty affordable for us if we can make it work.
And we can certainly, when I bring back the example projects to see how based on your feedback tonight, how those criteria would grade, I can do a per unit assessment for you so you can see what different development styles and what that per unit value is.
Okay, if there's no other comments, I think you got what you needed. Very excellent presentation. Great feedback from everybody. I think we hit that one on the head. Maybe that'll make it a little bit easier. So.
I hope so. Yeah, this is great. This is exactly what we needed to kind of finish up that IRB policy. So thank you.
Okay, we still have time, I guess, for some public comment. We may have someone in the audience that wants to make a comment on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Josh Brewer, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of the Northern Flint Hills. We have a new brand, so I had to remind myself to say the new brand here. I just wanted to offer a little bit of clarification on some of the really, really helpful comments you all gave. And first, I want to say thanks to Stephanie. That was a lot of information, as usual, that was presented in a really digestible way. Thanks for doing that. I think I really appreciate the emphasis on if we're going to be offering public subsidy for workforce housing, we need to make sure that we are restricting that subsidy to workforce housing units, those units that are affordable to our workforce, which we define as 60 to 120% of our area median income. And so from our housing market analysis, we heard that we needed 260 units in the 60 to 80% range, and that's affordable to $850 to $1,200 a month in rent, and we need 180 units between $1,200 and $1,850 per month in rent. So that's going to be a little bit tricky for some of the feedback that you offered, because I think y'all were talking a little bit about bedrooms. So we'll need to, so that restriction would be for the two-person household. So when you're using HUD guidelines, I think you'll need to offer some guidance on, are you determining that that applicability based on the two-person household, or will you actually be asking the developer of that rental housing unit to submit household demographics? Would they be saying, okay, this many units have one person in that household, and whether it's a 3-bedroom or a 1-bedroom, so it would be unaffordable for the one-person household? Or are you just saying this many units are affordable to a two-person household under 120% AMI? So there's going to be a little bit of distinction there that you all need to offer. Or you could just say we need these units to be under $1,850 in rent to access this this subsidy. The second piece there, and I appreciate Commissioner Upalt's comment on energy efficiency. Our energy code is not at 2021 IRC standards. We have stunted that code requirement to 2009. I think if we want to incentivize that, obviously that is something that Habitat would support, because those affordability standards are based on $150 a month in utilities. We know that many of our rental units pay way, way more than that because they've got a piece of cardboard over a window or something like that. The most effective way to address that would be just to update the code standards so that your energy code reflects 2021 standards. I know there's a lot of concern about that. We hear that concern, but I think we've demonstrated on our builds that it is possible. It's possible to do that development in an affordable way. The last piece that we would recommend is that we incentivize aging in place ready units. There are aging in place, or universal design standards are in place that would describe how a unit could be aging in place ready. We build a lot of wheelchair ramps. We don't want to be building more wheelchair. We don't want to be building units that in the future will require a wheelchair ramp. Let's get rid of the step, no step entry. Let's make the unit not ADA, but aging in place ready. And then the last piece, I appreciate Jason's concern about crowding out. I mean, you are talking about bringing public funds into the marketplace, and we are recognizing that the market has failed to deliver workforce housing units, and it will likely continue to do so. And so the public sector is trying to bring in this incentive. But in doing so, you are going to create new market conditions. And so your minimum unit that you determine there is likely going to be really important for what are the conditions you're going to create. So if the minimum unit is 2, for example, you might incentivize us to take down some of the deteriorated properties or empty properties and put in a duplex. You know, I know there was a lot of feedback on the super duplexes on the south side. We might be incentivizing that through this policy. And so I think that number is going to be really important for you all, and just determining kind of what are you nudging the market to create that it's not creating currently. I guess last thing on the student piece, students need a decent place to live too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have comments? Okay, then we'll close public comments. Any further commissioner comments?
I just want to make sure we're, well, you keep talking about workforce housing, but I think we also need to think starter home housing, you know, to encourage people to move back to Manhattan, to, you know, have a house that's affordable as their starter house, so they can build equity and then hopefully buy a bigger house and still stay in Manhattan.
That's what the RHIDs will be for.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because that's a different thing. We'll try to, you know, step 1, step 2, but I like the focus on this. We still haven't talked about how we're going to spend the money we got on that sales tax, because it can be rolled into this also to maybe offset some of those tax abatements, and we'll get to that. So, but excellent discussion and good feedback, public comment. So if there's nothing else for the commission, we can take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the March 5th, 2024 City Commission meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McCullough?
Yes.
Commissioner Opel?
Yes.
Commissioner Motta?
Yes.
Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Adamczyk?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and then I adjourn the March 5th, 2024 City Commission meeting. Thank you.